The world has spent the last 2 years watching Israel commit genocide in Gaza, and much of it, more so than in any other assault of this kind in history, has been captured on video and broadcast to the world. Now, that footage has changed a lot of people's minds about Israel, possibly permanently. But according to former Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, none of that is Israel's fault.
We were teaching. October 7th happened on a Saturday. We taught on a Wednesday. And then we saw this organized effort to really almost turn what had happened on October 7th upside down so that it was unrecognizable. And we began to realize that our students, smart, well-educated young people from our own country, from around the world, where were they getting their information? They were getting their information from social media, particularly TikTok. That is where they were learning about what happened on October 7th, what happened in the days, weeks, and months to follow. That's a serious problem. It's a serious problem for democracy, whether it's Israel or the United States, and it's a serious problem for our young people.
That was Clinton talking at the Israel Hayom Summit in New York City, organized by one of Israel's biggest newspapers. And what she's referring to there is a class she taught at Columbia University in the wake of October the 7th. I mean, Clinton didn't stop there.
Well, one thing that was going on is that there was an organized effort that was prepared literally on October 8th to begin to try to both provide mis- and disinformation about what had happened on October 7th, what the meaning was, what the history between the Israelis and the Palestinians, the region was. And it was frankly shocking to me how little the students we were encountering, not only in this class we teach, which is a very large class, international relations about crisis decision-making, but students more generally. And that's why I mentioned the social media piece of it, because when you would try to talk to them to engage in some kind of reasonable discussion, it was very difficult because they did not know history, they had very little context, and what they were being told on social media was not just one-sided, it was pure propaganda.
So, I mean, this is a bit rich, right? After October the 7th, as I always say, appalling event where lots of civilians were targeted and killed, right? There's no way of defending that. But the misinformation about October the 7th principally came from the mainstream media, who were telling us that there were mass rapes, that there were babies who were beheaded. Now, all of this came out afterwards to be completely false. Sort of the facts just mean that none of it was true. Lots of it came from Zaka, which was kind of religious organization of first responders, who presumably do some good work in terms of first responding, but their testimony has just been proved to be false. And it was all repeated uncritically by the Western press, who were constantly telling us, how sickening and depraved and worse than the Nazis what Hamas had done on that day was. As I say, what they did on that day, war crimes. But we were not told the truth by the mainstream media. And when it comes to the history, I would love Hillary Clinton to have been asked, what is the history people are being misinformed about? The nature of that event, means I imagine she wasn't. Well, what is the history that people are learning on TikTok? That Gaza has been occupied for decades, that it's been under siege for years, that Israel is dominated by politicians who want a greater Israel, who have no intention whatsoever of allowing a two-state solution to happen. If there hadn't been TikTok, one thing I find frustrating here is I actually do have a lot of critiques of social media as a disseminator of information. But the fact that the likes of Hillary Clinton think the real problem with social media is that, it's telling people what Israel is actually doing in Palestine. I don't know what she wants the gatekeepers to be telling people. People should only read the New York Times, where you imagine that Israel is this country that just really wants a two-state solution, if it just wasn't for these awkward extremist Palestinians who were stopping it happening. What TikTok allowed people to do is, one, see the pictures of the carnage of the mass killing by Israel in Gaza, and then two, see the context, which is that Israel is run by a bunch of people who want a greater Israel. if the New York Times and the liberal press is telling you, oh no, this is actually quite complicated. Israel wants a two-state solution. The Palestinians are getting in the way. That's a lie. So I do think this is one of those circumstances where social media is giving people a more accurate read of what's going on than what Hillary Clinton wants to tell you. Hillary Clinton also had some free public relations advice for Israel.
A lot of the challenge is with younger people. More than 50% of young people in America get their news from social media. So just pause on that for a second. They are seeing short-form videos, some of them totally made up, some of them not at all representing what they claim to be showing, and that's where they get their information. And that cuts across Democrats, Republicans, Jewish young Americans, non-Jewish young Americans. That's where they get their information. I think that's a threat, not just to Israel's standing in the world. It's a threat to democracy. It's a threat to our way of life, because how do you even make common ground decisions if people don't have the same information and they don't even see facts or evidence that they can rely on? So it's a bigger issue than what a Democrat says or what a Republican says. This goes to how we know what we should know about important issues.
Tig, I imagine you've got some strong feelings about what Hillary Clinton was saying there. And what's your response?
I think at the end of the clip that you just played, she gets a round of applause, which blew my mind, because I was thinking if I was a punter who paid to see this event, I would imagine she cost a pretty penny. And her big thing is TikTok. So we've been listening to this for 2 years. Like, what's the issue with Israel no longer having the support it once enjoyed, particularly amongst young people? And the answer has always been TikTok. Netanyahu pointed it out a long time ago. That was her big reveal. So that was my first impression. And second of all, I think, and this is just my opinion, I think she is knowingly lying. So there are people involved in the Zionist lobby. There are people who have been brought up Zionists, and they've been, exposed to a certain type of propaganda their whole life. And they may actually believe, I do think it's conceivable, they believe that TikTok is showing misinformation, disinformation, which is never actually, nobody ever really kind of explains or defines what they mean by those terms, especially in this particular discussion. And they do believe that it's the fault of social media that are showing incorrect videos, or that, I remember seeing a video with an interview with some Israelis on the street, and they one of them said at least 50 or 60% of the information that we're seeing is AI. So I understand that from a pure Zionist perspective. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, is a tactician. She's a mercenary, and she knows that what she's saying at effectively an Israel lobby love-in is what the people want to hear. They don't want to hear, maybe you need to look at yourself, maybe you need to stop doing your war crimes, maybe you need to stop the ever-encroaching settlements in the West Bank and being all-out genocidal maniacs. It's just TikTok. That's the problem. So I think there's something really, really dark, and it's true to form with this particular individual. Going forward, I think Brianna Joy said on Twitter, and I thought it was a really good point, any presidential candidate going forward, or anybody in the Democrats who has aspirations for any office, or even their supporters, need to distance themselves from the Clintons, because, they have had a lifelong career in this mendacious kind of drumming up support for more mass killing in the global south. And particularly Hillary, she's gone to bat time and time again for the Israel lobby. She supports them, as you say, in what have actually been proved to be disinformation and misinformation. She's stood by them 100%. And I think she should be accountable when the dust finally settles on all this horror and hell.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. I don't see how she can seriously believe. I suppose, confirmation bias is a thing. Maybe she sort of hears people saying it's all because of TikTok, and subconsciously she's thinking, oh, I like that explanation, so I'm going to cling to it. But if you've seen the images that came out of Gaza over the past 2 years, like, unless you're just living in some dream world where you think they're all completely made up, I don't see how you can't come to a more reasonable explanation as to why people are turning against Israel, and she mentioned in that speech, even Jewish Americans are turning against Israel. It's because they were raining down bombs on 2 million people trapped, moving from home to home, living in tents and then bombed again. Right? It's not actually that complicated. You don't need this really important theory about social media and misinformation to see why people turned against Israel when they were committing a genocide.